Okay.
All right, great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call to order the Town of Paxton Select Board meeting for Monday, December 9th, 2024. It is now 7:04 PM, and we are here in the training room of the Public Safety Complex. I'm going to start with the consent agenda. As per usual, we are going to read through the consent items. If there are any items that anyone on the board wishes to move to a later point in the agenda, we can certainly do that. Just please note your objection, and that will occur. When there are no objections, I'll declare that those items have been approved. There are a number of items on the consent agenda tonight, and so I'm going to go ahead and start reading them now. So the first item is to approve the meeting minutes from the regular meeting held on November 12th, 2024. Number 2 is to approve the meeting minutes from the meeting held prior to the special town meeting on November 18th, 2024. Number 3 is to appoint Mark Shepard as a part-time police officer. Number 4 is to appoint Jamal Holland as a part-time police officer. Number 5 is to accept the resignation of Carl Ottmar from the WRSD School Committee effective 12/2/2024. Number 6 is to accept the resignation of Paul Sullivan from the Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee effective 11/18/2024. Number 7 is to accept the resignation of Robert Pelzarski from the Planning Board effective 11/20/2024. Number 8 is to approve a sole source procurement for FY26 to Suzer IT for IT services in the amount of $47,520. Number 9 is to approve a sole source procurement to King Information Systems for file system and file organization scanning for permitting information in the amount of $50,000. And number 10, I think I might be missing a page here. Let me move over. Is to approve the annual December licenses. And so we have a few of those. I'm going to go ahead and just list them. We have Paxton Marketplace for all liquor, Seven Saws Brewery for general liquor, Paxton Liquor Store for all liquor, Anna Maria College has a club license, Kettlebrook Golf Course has a club license, the American Legion has a Veterans Club license. Under auto body shops, we have Paxton Auto. Under Class 2 car sales, we have Paxton Auto and Pimental Realty Trust. For common victualers, we have Theo's, JLC Donuts, which is DBA Dunkin' Donuts, Paxton House of Pizza, Paxton American Legion, Paxton Marketplace, Kettlebrook Golf Course, and Sodexo over at Anna Maria. For packaged goods, we have Paxton Liquor Store, Paxton House of Pizza, and Paxton Marketplace. And for above-ground tanks, we have Worcester County Memorial Park, Kettlebrook Golf Course, and Industrial Tower and Wireless.
Julia?
Yeah.
Just one quick correction for Jamal. It's a full-time police officer.
Oh,
I thought you said part-time.
I'm sorry.
As you know, we're in our rebuilding phase. Jamal Holland is coming to us from Montague. He has 7 years on the job, full-time, and an associate's degree. He's here with his girlfriend, Mindy. Jamal is moving from, he's moved to Northborough recently, so he's relocating in the area. He's going to be a great asset to this department. He's going to fill a very, very needed position. Mark Shepard used to work for Paxton Police. He has 34 years in law enforcement. He recently retired from Boylston Police as a sergeant and is going to be taking a position at Anna Maria College. The benefit with hiring a part-timer with so many years' experience is that he's still a full-time sworn police officer. So he can be armed, he can go out and back up officers. So he's going to serve multi-purposes. Both of these two come with great experience and something that we can use right now, and they're going to be a great addition to this department. So I just want to thank you for taking the time and for accepting the appointments.
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Any questions, comments from Select Board?
No.
Good.
Welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so hearing no objections, I declare that you're appointed. And all of the other consent items have been approved. So thank you. Welcome aboard. Jamal, I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
Mark?
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. It's good to be back.
I'm sending handshakes.
Okay.
And Mark Love knows that my presentations tend to get blown out of proportion.
I moved to the next slide.
Oh, did it?
I did. It's like
It's a bad viewing angle.
Yeah, I know. I gotta.
Carry the mic with you. Yeah.
All right. Good evening. So last year we started something somewhat new for the fire department and EMS, is writing off our bad debt, essentially uncollectibles. And so this year, last year, if you remember, we did the first 5 years of the existence of EMS in Paxton, and that was FY13 right up to the beginning or the end of FY17. We wrote off around $270,000, well, right there, $270,436 of uncollectible debt for the first 5 years of existence of the Paxton Fire Department EMS. This year, we are going to do FY17, FY18 to FY23. So the last 5 years that we didn't do, and that'll bring us right up to the end of FY23, beginning of FY24, which some of that's still out in collectible debt. Next slide. All right, so the new number this year is $229,886.75. So that's 5 fiscal years worth of debt that we have not collected, that is pretty much unable to collect. In that number, and it's broken down, as you can see on the screen, that's $47,000 uncollectible from our billing company. The $161,000, it says First Financial, that's from our collection agency. So once the billing company's done billing its cycle for the 6 months to almost a year, it kicks it to First Financial, which is the collections agency. So that's still out there, and that's really unable to collect. The number below that, the $20,434, that is medical debt that is beyond the 6 years. That's beyond the statute of limitation on medical debt. So that is the $20,000. That's also in First Financial. They've already stopped attempting to collect that. And then the bottom number are patients that we've transported that have since deceased, and obviously we can't collect that money. And that's $2,575, and that's right up to current. So our total write-off, like I said, is $229,886.75. That is for fiscal years 18 through 23. All right. And just to kind of give you a rundown of how we get there, the only billable portion of EMS is actual transport, so when we bill the insurance companies. So to show you what our actual transport numbers are, now our actual call numbers for EMS are probably double these, but a lot of them don't result in transports. It results in treat and release, refusals, unfounded calls. So as you can see, the trend, FY21 was 491 transports, FY22, COVID year, 726 transports, FY23, 676 transports, and FY24, 582. We're starting to see the trend back to normal, around 500 transports a year. All right, and the billing procedure, as you can see, just a quick rundown, our providers and our billing clerk start the process. So the providers have to document, documentation's huge. We collect all the patient's data and demographics from the hospitals, and we send it to our billing company, which is Coastal Billing. They're a third-party company. They know all the ins and outs, have all the software for the insurance companies, know exactly what's going to get done, and they bill it out from there. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit. Medicare is good for that, where you'll have a primary and secondary insurer. All right. Oh, my God. I'm sorry. So our biggest payer in the town of Paxton is obviously Medicare. So any of you over 62 and a half may be on Medicare. There's a lot of allowable rates. And with these rates, they're obviously a fraction of what private insurance is. So it all depends on your level of coverage with Medicare, A, B, I think there's a C and D. And these requirements, like I said, they're a fraction of what private insurers pay, and sometimes there's a bigger deductible, or there's not a deductible, or we can't balance bill. All right, so you can see up here, and I won't go over this whole chart, but this is what the billing rates are. As you can see from the top, what we bill is all the way over on the left side. Okay, and then the right two columns where it says Medicare allowable, Medicaid allowable, that's what Medicare and Medicaid pay out. So as far as those two plans, if you're on Medicare or Medicaid, that's all the town can collect. We can bill the $1,200, but we can only collect the allowable rates. And you can see the big difference in ground mileage versus private insurers, and with our rates, our standard rates, and then what's actually allowable through Medicare and Medicaid. So 2013 to 2017, the total amount collected was 1.1 million and change. 2018 to 2023 is 1.8 million total collected. The total up to FY23, where we're writing off, was a little over $3 million collected from the ambulance service. And the collection rate then was 90%, 90.74%. FY23, we collected $488,000, and FY24, $526,000. During that time, FY23 and 24, we only collected $2,000 from our collection agency, from the outstanding debts that we had there. We are still around 90%, which is fantastic for most EMS services, so we're doing good in that aspect. And once we get everything current, our expected write-off per year is around $47,000 to $50,000. What's up? Questions?
Any questions for Mike?
We could be looking at a dump truck or a budget relief of some sort. So thank you for cleaning it up, straightening it up, and getting it to where it is. A year ago, I wanted to write the whole thing off then, fearing we'd be back here this evening to have another pain to have to realize. I'm glad it's behind us, but I wish it had been realized far better then than it was, more like it is right now. So congratulations, glad it's behind us. Wish we had that cash for this year's upcoming budget.
Yep, and I would too. But going forward, like I said, we should only be writing off around 50,000 roughly, about 10% of what we bring in, so. Yep.
If you look at the years involved, the rates were about 50 grand a year.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
It's not like we're increasing or it seems to be just.
Yeah, we're staying in a steady trend of 90%.
All right,
Yeah.
and just to give it some point of reference, can you, 90% is an incredible capture rate in terms of recovering the money that you're billing out. Do you have any idea, just in the area, what some of the other, and I'm not asking you to be specific, but say, are they somewhere between 65 and 70%, somewhere in there, 75%?
Entirely, I'm not sure. I like being at 90%, so I don't really follow up with a lot of them. But I can I think the ones with Coastal, with our company, and I don't want to be promoting one product or another. The company that we have are all right around 90%, I believe. Yep. And it all depends on the insurer and the demographic of the town too. Yep. Yep.
Any other questions for Mike? No? Hearing none? Thank you. Appreciate
you.
you.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so moving on to new business. Exciting step here. We have to review the potential appointment of the following applicants for the Charter Review Committee. We have Tara DeAndrea, Gary Goldberg, Stephen Robesco, Paul Bertler, David Johnson, Chuck Putney, and Megan Puglisi. I see Gary, I see Chuck, and I think that's all we have with us tonight. But you have their appointment application. So what I'd like to do,
with these 7 people, and I'm happy to appoint all 7.
Yep.
And I thank them for volunteering.
great. So we have a motion to appoint all 7. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, Kirk?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. So the committee has been appointed. For those of you that are here, and anybody who may be now newly appointed to the committee and watching, the next step will be to go up to see the town clerk and get sworn in. When you get sworn in, you should receive a copy of the Copeland and Page open meeting law summary. So make sure you review that, because now that you are appointed members of a committee, you are subject to open meeting law. So make sure that you are compliant with that. Then the next step, Heather, I'm sure will work with you in order to get started, set up a first meeting, and then you'll appoint officers. So I think that's all I have. Anything from you, Heather?
No, just really excited for this, and I would expect the first meeting probably in January. Once we get
through
everyone's
the
contact information together on one email, we will send out a poll to figure out when everyone can meet.
Awesome. So that's super duper important work. I look forward to seeing what you have, and I'm sure that this will be, judging by the applicants that have put in, now appointees to the committee, I'm sure there will be a lot of thought put into this. I'm super excited to see what you come up with. So thank you very much for your choice to serve the town. All right.
Welcome aboard, thank you.
Okay, so next up is follow-up from the special town meeting. Heather?
Yes, so we recently had a special time. We need to make sure we start talking about what the capacity is for that location, whether or not it requires us using 2 rooms, both the cafeteria, the gym, logistics, what that would be. It seems very heavy procedurally, right? We need assistant moderator, technology, both rooms, all of those pieces. The other option is starting to look at the potential of using perhaps AMC as a location to host the meeting, and making sure we have all the details on the capacity of that room and so forth. Other things, this was the first time we used clickers. We had talked about them previously at a select board meeting relative to potential ARPA funding, but we were able, through the kindness of Rutland, to borrow theirs, as well as their assistant city clerk or assistant town clerk to run the clickers. I think initially we were going to just use them as a backup, and I think Roger was super excited to utilize them as soon as he saw the large number of people in the room.
Yes.
Those who did use them and reported back, and even at the very end, seemed like they were very happy about using the clickers. We still have lots of questions we have to figure out. It's the first time we've ever used them, and we want to make sure we get all those pieces. We know we ran into more logistic pieces, being not our own equipment, and some of the batteries weren't working, and it felt like we were, raise your hand for a battery.
Yes.
Constantly piece. So those are definitely things we'd have to consider. We'd also have to continue seeing if it's possible to borrow Rutland's, or if we would need to procure our own. It seems like in further conversations, there might be some hesitation to allow us to borrow it based on the current agreement that Rutland has with the vendor. So that might push us towards, if we're interested in using them, we might need to procure our own set. The other thing that came up, feedback from the board or anything else the board as a whole would like me to look at moving forward as we start thinking many months ahead, but at annual town meeting in May.
Yeah. So I think knowing that there's going to be more zoning pieces on the annual town meeting, I do think we should look toward Anna Maria. In the past, when we've known that there's going to be a heavy turnout, We did have some success booking Zeco for that, so I would definitely reach out to them and find out, number one, the capacity. I'm not sure what the capacity is, but it's certainly larger than what we have. So, and then, you know, how far in advance they would need us to let them know that we want that. In terms of, you know, the procedural elements, certainly if we are at Anna Maria, that's going to solve some of the parking issues, because there is going to be more space for that, ideally anyways, particularly, I think, May, hopefully. I'm not sure exactly when they exit, but I think, you know, for the year. But that, depending on where the town meeting falls, it may be after they're done, which would help with parking, but that's something that we may want to think about as well. Lori does a phenomenal job organizing these things, but she only is able to organize for what has been routine up until now, and we had a very non-routine meeting. And so we're learning from that, and I think, you know, identifying some of the bottlenecks with entry into the meeting is going to be really important to make sure that going forward we have maybe a different process in place to help alleviate the registration issue. Other than that, I personally really liked the fact that we had clickers at that meeting. I thought it really helped the situation, right? Otherwise, we would have been there probably a lot longer than we were waiting for counts. So that was really helpful. I understand the problem that Rutland probably sees with sharing their clickers. Remind me, what's the lift for purchasing our own?
About 13K.
13,000, yeah, that's about what I expected. And how many clickers would that get us?
It gets us around the 200-300 range.
Yeah. And how many people did we have at that last meeting?
314?
Yeah. So we would need at least that amount. Yeah. So just food for thought. We'll have a later discussion tonight. I think that will include that. So any comments from the board, Carol?
I really think the checking did create a lot of problems. I think more people on checking would have helped a lot.
Yeah.
Nobody expected that amount,
Right.
unfortunately. And I think the clickers really did help. We saw that with one of the voice votes. When we used the clickers, it changed it.
Yeah.
So
No.
I think they do work.
Yeah.
So, but I think if we can get Anna Maria College, that'd be great. I'm not same as you. I'm not sure about the timing with the finishing school. It might be their graduations and so forth. I don't know.
Right.
But we can look into that.
But we can certainly look at, if we're anticipating.
It's written down so we know whose clicker is what. But only for the first vote, just to make sure that everyone's clicker is working.
Right.
And then you can be like, 314, hey, Julia,
Yeah.
you need a new battery, your clicker's not working, you didn't push the button, right? Like,
Yeah.
just to make sure that everyone shows up, and then at that point, if people don't want to vote, that's fine, but also try to encourage people that if they're going to vote and they don't want to vote one way or the other, they can just hit the abstain button,
Yeah.
and then it still registers that they voted, just for that piece. So that's the one piece we don't know if it's able to do. I think some capacity, it does have to do some kind of roll call, but I don't know if it can do that. And I imagine the vendor can probably set it up to show which clickers are working. I mean, you may not have every number, because you might have 350, and maybe I handed
Yeah.
336 before 320, but.
Right. My understanding is this is the same system that's being used in Congress, right?
Oh, now you're asking me questions I don't know the answer to.
Okay.
Because the reason I asked the question is, I guess it begs the question, what if someone thinks they're voting and their vote's not being heard? And does that, that's a whole other issue. That's the only reason I asked the question.
Right, and yeah, I think that's what Heather was getting at, just making sure that all the clickers are working to begin with. There was a decent gap between the number of clickers out and the number of votes that came in with each article. And when I first saw that, I questioned it, and I asked the Rutland Assistant Town Clerk who was there, and I said, is this normal? And he said, yeah, it is. That's what we see in Rutland as well, that there's just a lot of people who choose not to vote. So,
That's why I think it's important, we would want to check and see if it has the capability of doing a roll call vote and then asking the moderator to mandate everyone, push a button.
you gotta do.
Just
right.
initially, make sure your thing's working and then,
Stay.
Exactly, yep.
but even if folks never want to vote again, that's fine. But just to make sure that they're all working so we all feel sane.
Right, right. We definitely want to make sure everybody's voice is being.
I thought we did test them at first. I thought there was a test question.
There was a test question at the beginning.
But I don't think we had 100%
We didn't.
participation in the test question. I think we'd have to get to a point where it's required and then a way to figure out which clicker didn't click.
Yeah.
I worry about the liability of the Dr. Franklin too. He felt like they didn't get, their vote wasn't counted.
Yeah, I think that if that was something that we chose to do, I think it would be nice to have the vendor come in and talk to us about it, and maybe give a demonstration. And that way it would help everybody sort of feel comfortable with the process and make sure that all of our concerns are addressed. All right, any other follow-up from special town meeting? Sorry, go ahead, Neil.
Oh, okay. Just a couple of comments. First, I noticed that the attendance level or number was dynamic, because people came for a certain period, and if they got frustrated, they may have left. So it may not have been 312 throughout the course of the evening. And I don't know if there's down some of the cafeteria tables on the sides, and we have to learn from something like this. But I agree with Heather that the coming meetings are not going to be any less contentious. They may not be as well attended, but people in town want to know what's going on.
Right.
So that was just a thought, an overview as we look back on it. If you come and you get a clicker and you're ready, you have to sit. Even if you sit as a group, I'm okay with that, but just sit. And I think that allows the moderator a little better control of the attendees.
Yeah, and this is feedback for Roger, really.
Well, for everybody.
And we can certainly pass that along to him, because town meeting is the moderator's meeting, and so he would be in control of that. But I think it's a valid point.
Yeah, given kind of what transpired that evening, I thought he did an excellent job trying to control,
A difficult situation.
I'll say the crowd, whatever. Yeah, it was, I've never seen that. I've been in town for 30-some-odd years. I've attended, I would say, at least 90% of the town meetings in my residency here, and I have never seen anything like that. So, but we have to learn from it, because I think that's more of what we could look forward to.
I agree.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
So just looking through the numbers real quick, Kirk, I'm only on Article 8, but from Article 3 had 267 for the amendment, then the final one had 271. Then we went down to 257 for Article 4, 250 for Article 5, total votes, abstain, yes, no. 6 drew us back at 278, and then 8 dropped back down to 245. So I think part of it's, as Neil said, some people came, some people left at some point, and some people also just decided not to vote at all. Because then you're into 270s again come Article 9. In Article 10, you're back to a little over 250. I guess it's 260 something.
Heather, which ones were the zoning ones? I know they were at the end.
You want to know the zoning ones?
Well, were they 7, 8, and 9, or 8, 9, and 10?
I don't know. Let's see here. What's this one? Zoning map and zoning bylaw
It was
revised.
8.
Let's
I think
see.
that started at 8.
10 and 11.
We're still only sitting around 80 to 85% of the people though.
But that's assuming that you still had 314 in the room.
Correct. Kirk, I think, as we sat up front, I mean, you saw it too, you were witness, people were leaving, just
Right.
because it got late, and it's like,
Yeah.
So I think the 312 may have dropped down to, I don't know, 290.
Right.
So by the time you're at the end of Article 10, this was the,
ADU.
okay, I'm not sure, maybe. No, ADU was 11.
Okay.
So the one right before that, it was yes 29, no 204, abstain 5. So you're over, just over 230. And then the ADU one was, where are you, all the way down here? 205.
Okay.
So like the numbers dropped significantly. But 120 people voted yes for the clickers, 6 voted no.
And that was the last question,
That was the
right?
very
So-
last.
126 people who voted, but.
And there were no abstentions?
There was
None.
0 abstentions on that.
I mean, that's interesting, because, again, that was the last question of the night, and if there were 230 or 50 or 70 people there, we only got half of it, less
People
than
were already standing up and leaving at
Okay.
that point, yeah.
So I think that just kind of backs up the idea, right, that there's a variable, there's likely a variable in whether people vote or not, literally.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I could just add, I think that was a tough time. There's a lot of people that aren't sure of technology. There's a huge varying age group, and I just think it was small. It was hard to read. It was hard to see the power button.
The display
and
was hard to read, I agree
So
with that.
I think there could have been people who truly did want to vote but couldn't figure it out. And the worst case scenario is you're hitting the wrong button, the button you don't want. But I am in favor of the clickers. I just think, appreciate that they fit in the palm of your hand, but given that the majority of our
Right.
attendees
iPad.
currently tend to be
iPad
over a
clickers.
certain age, I just think it was hard to see, hard to manipulate.
Yeah,
And the lighting's not the best.
Yeah.
and the lighting isn't the best, I agree, yeah. No, I think it's a point well made. All right. Anything else on the town meeting? Anybody? We don't want to postmortem that anymore? Okay. So next on the agenda is a discussion of the location and procedural elements for the annual town meeting in May 2025. I think we may have handled that. So I'm going to move on. The next one is an official select board vote to send the special act to the general court. My understanding is Heather actually already did this, but just to ensure that we are following proper process where the warrant article specifically stated that the town meeting is requesting the select board to petition the general court. We want to make sure that we are following the process so that later on, we don't have somebody come in and say that the proper process wasn't followed and then call into question the result. So,
So
we have a motion to, what's your motion?
to move the, I can't scroll because Heather's got the control on mouse. To move the vote to go from a 3-person to a 5-person board to the state for approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, Kirk? Carol?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. All right, moving on from that. We have to look at reviewing and revising the mission and scope for the EDC, particularly now that we have the town meeting, aforementioned town meeting results. So Heather, take the floor.
Yes, give me 1 second. So we did add this on Friday because I realized I forgot it, and you know what would help is if I pulled up what that mission statement actually looks like. So the Economic Development Committee has been meeting on a regular monthly basis. And in doing so, they had discussed a number of meetings ago to look at sending back to the Select Board the EDC mission, mission and direction statement, just to make sure everyone was on the same page. Let me just think real quick, Tony. Pull that up. Okay, and it's not there first. Julie, can we skip that one for right now? and
Yep,
come back
I can
to
get
that,
back
just
to
so I
it.
Pull it. Thank you.
All right. So, the next item is a request from the planning board to use the training room for their monthly meetings. I'd argue that the planning board's business is one of the most influential boards on the status of the town. And so like the select board and the finance committee, I would argue that the planning board should also be in this room so that they can be televised and live cast, so that people can pay attention and understand where the town is headed. Any input on that, Neil?
Well, yes. I guess we need to know schedule of nights or whatever. Select boards are Monday nights, which I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. What is finance?
Wednesday.
When are you meeting right now? Wednesdays?
Finance is Wednesday.
Is it every Wednesday, every other Wednesday? I mean, select board is every other week, so I'm just trying to figure out if we can kind of weave these things together. Monday is a better night. I've talked with some of the members. They would prefer Monday, but if we can't do it, then we'll possibly go to Tuesday. We don't want to go to Thursday or Friday.
Yeah.
So if there's a schedule, which you usually post,
Yep.
and is that kind of cast in stone, or is it dynamic? Is it moving something? We have a snowstorm, that I understand, so
Yeah.
you'd have to postpone or whatever.
So a couple of things here. The master schedule for this room is run by the fire department and the police department.
Okay.
They get first dibs on this room if they need it for training purposes, because that was the original intent of this room. However, they've been very gracious in allowing us to start using it for these meetings, and so select board typically is every other Monday. I can't say that it's not dynamic. There have been times when we've needed to change a meeting for whatever reason, and I can't necessarily predict what that would be. I think Mark would probably say the same for finance. You know, certainly around budget season, they could meet as often as weekly, and you know, as few, I don't know what's the opposite of often, but as least often as monthly. So, you know, I think that these are things that we'll just need to work around. But if you have a schedule that you like, I think I would suggest that you just pass it through. I think the admin, is it your admin, Mike, that handles the schedule primarily? You know, I'd pass it through him and to get put onto the schedule for the room. And as long as it's open, it's open.
Okay, so is select usually first and third?
What are we doing right now? Second and fourth.
Second, all right, so we could move to first. And I guess I know we're coming into a very chaotic season. And it's going to be more chaotic because of the things we're going to be facing as we move ahead. So I agree with you. Finance could be meeting weekly. Select Board at points could be meeting weekly. We have Wachusett coming in to talk with you. I mean, everybody's going to come in to talk and this and that. So right now, we'll aim for the first week. Mike, does that?
Yeah, we're second and fourth, Tuesday, Thursday,
Oh, see, because there's
training, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so anyway, we'll aim for the first Monday of the month, excluding January. We'll probably move it out a week or because of the holiday
Yeah.
and all of that kind of stuff. But after that, we would aim for the first Monday of the month,
Yeah.
if that's okay. All right.
Yeah.
So having just discussed, I think that helps us.
Right.
Now, some of our meetings are as short as 10 minutes, and some of them go on as, we've had a couple that have gone an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It just depends on what comes forward through the town. So as I said, it may not be a big thing, it may not be a big inconvenience, we'll say, to use the building, just to have it called the meeting to order, do the first, accept minutes or whatever, and the next thing, and we're done, and that's
Yeah.
it, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's fine. So we'll aim for the first, I'll pass that on to the other board members.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to follow up a little bit, I saw that you accepted the resignation of Mr.
So moved.
Well,
So moved.
well done. Is there a second?
I'm in favour as long as the chiefs are okay with it, so, yeah, second.
50%.
50% of them are.
Well,
The other one's not
I need
here to be able to
Yeah,
comment,
we need to have
unfortunately. Yeah.
both on board,
Yeah.
both use the building.
All right, so with that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, Kirk?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. And Heather, can you just confirm with Mark that that's okay?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay. Are you ready to go back to EDC?
No, Outlook and I are in a fight.
Okay.
So we're gonna, if it's okay, I just want to make sure I do
Yeah.
due diligence to that, so maybe first meeting in January won't
That's
change
fine.
the directions.
Yep. Okay, so moving on from that, the last item that we have for old business under ARPA funding. And so the things that we need to do, we had discussed this previously and opted to wait until December to try and let some of the capital requests come in. We have how much, Heather, in available ARPA money for allocation?
So we started out with about 14,000 and some change. We need to vote over, the board needs to vote over 10,298.77. That's what's left. Sorry, Scott. Let me try that again. So our balance before was 14,617, and then the select board this evening would appropriate the total of 24,916.48.
Okay, so let's pause there. So we have that $10,298.77 that needs to be voted to move from the engineering for the West Street water main back into the unencumbered balance. So I'll take a motion if somebody would be willing to make one to that extent.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor, Kirk?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Okay, so now we have a total of $24,916.48 in our ARPA fund to be allocated. And so we have a few options that Heather has put forward in terms of things that we might want to consider, which we had previously discussed. One of them was being tree removal. You may recall that we expended just under $100,000 already from ARPA funds for tree removal. We are lucky enough to have the tree warden be on the board, and so he has advised us that there are still quite a few trees in town that could use some work. Other options include replacement of AEDs for town locations, purchase of remote clickers for town meeting, which you have heard. We discovered some difficulties with the AV system at Paxton Center School during town meeting, and so that was a flip response, I think, in the middle of town meeting, that maybe we could consider upgrading some of this equipment, but just a thought. So it is on here for discussion, but the last item is also reimbursement for police department training costs in the amount of $8,750, and this is for training and uniforms. And remind me, is this a way that helps to, may not be a lot of money, but it helps to, every little bit counts in offsetting the budget, so. Let me just ask for some comments from the board. Carol and Kirk, what are your thoughts?
Carol, do you want to go first, or you two?
You can go. You can go, Kirk.
So, I dug a cord out of a deed box in my office, and I think we solved the AV problem at the
One of.
school, for the most part.
Really?
But my thought
That's
is,
magic.
it's a couple, yeah, I didn't even know, like, it was crazy how you could have it, but
Okay.
I'm not an IT guy, but I strongly think that we need to look at the AEDs. And as far as the tree funding, anything that we can put in there is going to do a couple of things. It's going to take care of issues that are destined to come up. We have a lot of trees in town, and even if we took all of that, you're only talking about maybe 25 of close to 100 trees that need to be taken care of. If those come down, they hit power lines, as we found out on Marshall Street last week, then it becomes a much more expensive compound problem, which is more expensive. So that's kind of where I stand right now.
Thanks, Kirk.
Carol, your thoughts?
My thoughts, obviously the trees are very important because they're a liability in town. I'm very for the AEDs as well because they're very important, and if they need replacing, then they need replacing. Also, I think the police training is very important when we're trying to rebuild that department, and like I said, you requested $8,000 for the 2 new officers he hired, and he's hired 2 more, which is going to have to train and equip. If we're not going to, because it's an expense that can last us for a while.
Yeah, and it's the related importance of, what it operates essentially.
I agree. So,
Yeah.
so I think whatever we spend the money on, I think it'll be worthwhile. But I think we need to realise that it should either go, like I said, to the police training, or possibly to the AEDs, or both. Maybe split it between both. I don't know. But Kirk solved the problem of the school, so that's good.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I don't think it's a permanent solution, right? Like,
But I don't think
Kirk's,
Yeah,
Kirk's
but-
solution was the $15.95 old school blue HDMI cord. No other version was working.
Well, maybe, maybe a class graduating will do something
Old
like
school.
that. It works.
Reliability, yep.
But speaking as a tree warden, we do have a substantial amount of issues in town. And they can become hazards. And when that happens, then we find ourselves scrambling with the DPW, with the light department, with making decisions that we shouldn't really have to make, to call in a crane at 10 o'clock at night to get the power on somewhere. It's a compounding problem. So I just wanted to bring that to light.
And you're never going to know exactly which tree.
Relates to the post-training, which is the newly legislated required training for police officers. What's up here? You make a valid point that officers that are currently sworn in or leaving and coming from another department may not require the post-training, but there's still uniforms and other expenses that are required in order to bring them on board here. So I'm not sure if that's something that Mark would be looking for as well.
And just, I'm going to follow up on that. I know he's not here, but at least we're getting it out. It'll be in the minutes and whatever. We can follow it next month or the next meeting. Going through the process that we just went through since the annual budget discussions in May, the chief made us aware that he has some memorial funds, or I'm going to call them memorial funds, or the donations that have been made to the department to be used at his discretion. And he said at one point that he was willing to do some of these costs, similar costs like this, to that. So I was just hope that instead of thinking of using ARPA funding for that, that if he still has some funds available, he would do that. The next question kind of goes to the fire chief, if he's here, and he is. The AEDs, I mean, how old are they? If you can just help me, Mike, a little bit, that's all.
No problem. And I'm assuming replaced last year. The expected lifespan of an AED is 8 years. The ones that ride in the cruisers.
How long? I'm sorry, 8 years?
8 years, 8 years. The ones that ride in the cruisers and the fire trucks, they get exposed to the elements a little more, the cold and the heat, they tend to fail us a little earlier. So we've replaced a couple here or there, but they end up getting shuffled around. And right now, if we could replace the 12, 4 of which are truly public access, the other 8 would be on the fire apparatus and police cruisers. So, like really, like at your service, public access there. So.
Okay, so just to, thank you. That very helpful.
No problem.
Just to kind of follow up on that then, and I believe they should be everywhere that they need to be. I'm not, advocating for one way or the other, but with the, if there's a possibility of a need at the light department, I mean, that's an enterprise fund that, the revenue that they generate comes in, and I would ask that you consider having them look at it out of their budget, operating budget. And I guess I would also suggest the same for the DPW, because the water is an enterprise fund. And I know there's 2 departments there. There's, water and then the Department of Public Works. So, but if there's enterprise funds that come in for that, I mean, you're looking at $1,800. I'm sure that they could find that. That could fall off one of the trucks or something.
You raise an interesting point that I hadn't thought of before, is that I have to wonder if the linemen carry AEDs on their trucks.
They do.
I assume they do, yeah.
Okay, so there's just not one in the building.
Right.
No,
And-
as far as I know, as far as I can speak right now, there isn't one.
All right, and they're taking care of the maintenance and acquisition cost of those for the light department?
In the
Okay,
trucks, yeah.
perfect. I mean, that makes sense to me, just because, again, we're going the other way. Okay. All right, I'm good with that right now. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, I'd like to call on you because we had talked about this at the last meeting and holding off to try and let capital request.
ARPA gave 100. Don't hold any of us to this, but when you gave 100, the need was 250.
Oh, I totally get it, yeah.
So, right now, somebody could say, well, care for it when it falls down, but if it falls down on somebody or property, or we lose power, then there could be all kinds of ramifications. In thinking out of the box, you could actually put this $24,000 toward a police cruiser. There was money voted at the special town meeting to fund the capital depreciation, so a little of combination of capital depreciation funds and ARPA funds, we could end up funding a police cruiser, which I do know is coming through the pipeline, which is life-saving and affects 4,000 people as opposed to, I don't want to overplay the issue of clickers, but clickers are nice if we can afford it. We can't afford it, and that affects 300 people once or twice a year, where a police cruiser is, 24/7. That may be a reach, and that's certainly unconventional to think that way, but I would also remind you that you did buy a police cruiser out of ARPA funds
We did.
already, so
Yep.
it's not quite as unusual as it sounds.
I think the problem we'll run into with trying to buy a police cruiser is that the remaining funds for that cruiser would be contingent on a town meeting vote. And we have to have this money under contract before the end of December in order to be spent
There's some
and appropriated.
restrictions.
So with that, 71, that's reserving 5,000 for the audit, right?
14,617 plus the
Plus the remaining amount.
10,298.
Yeah,
So it's 20.
so we've got 24,000.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just wrote down the 10,290.
yeah.
So what was the proposal again?
So the proposal was to, oh, go ahead, Kirk, I don't want to put it in your mouth. Go ahead.
To go ahead and fund the AED replacements at 13,000, which would give us the remaining of, who's got a calculator?
Roughly
11,900.
11,900.
Yeah, 11,900, $16.48, whatever it is.
Yep.
To go to the tree budget, so that we can take care of trees as we can before they end up striking the DPW and everybody else
And
and their budgets.
Kirk, you're confident that you'd be able to expend that before the end of the year?
We just have to contract.
Or contract it.
Probably enter a contract with the
Yeah.
vendor for services up to that amount, and then we have to expend it no later than 31st December 26.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm 100% confident I could
Just-
expend that by the end of the year, or have that in the contract.
All right, so we have a motion on the table.
I'm okay with the motion. I'll second that with the, as I said earlier, as long as that we're aware that if any further money is needed for training or search from the police department, that it goes to reserve without any issue.
Okay, any further discussion, Kirk?
No, ma'am.
Carol?
No.
Bill?
I just had a question here. I lost my train of thought. I'm having a senior moment on the trees. Do we have to sign a contract with a tree company? I mean, can't we use that money, say with the DPW, to pay overtime or something like this so they can do it?
So the DPW, number one, doesn't have the time to manage trees right now because they're down a lot of staff. But other than that, I don't think,
Picking up the logs, when I've been able to get a tree service to get them on the ground and clean up the brush, but that's taxing to them and our equipment as well. So I feel more comfortable just having a tree company that I can get under contract and just say, here's the tree, take care of it. Just, from soup to nuts, and not tax our other resources in town.
It's difficult though, Kirk, isn't it, to get what I'll say a competitive bid at that point? Because, I mean, we're on the short time. You got
Yeah.
roughly 15 days that you can do this.
There's no question, but my plan would be to sit down with a couple of tree companies and just say, hey, this is what I have to spend under our ARPA. What can you give me for it?
Don't even
Is
tell
it
them it's ARPA, 'cause-
asking them to take a bit of a gamble? It is, but for $11,000, it's a contract that they'll have for the next year for emergency tree service.
the good thing we do know is that we have a couple of different tree companies that we've already got established good relationships with, and so it should be fairly easy to solicit those bids.
Are we using Smith? Have we contacted Smith?
I can't tell you who. I know we had Northwest, I think, Tree come in to do the ARPA.
We've had Northwest, we've had CK Smith, and we've had So I'll amend my motion based, my motion based on the numbers that you just stated, because I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, so the amended motion would have 13,000 going to the AEDs, $9,999 going to trees, and $1,917.48 going to police department training costs.
Trusting your math, so moved.
All right, is there a new second for the amended motion?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, Kirk?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
And I will vote aye. All right, so that's the last thing we had on our regular agenda. I have no select board correspondence. We do have a town administrator's report.
Okay. So upcoming, December 10th, which is tomorrow, the Open Space Recreation Planning Committee is meeting at 5 o'clock at the Council on Aging. The same day, Light Commission has a 5:30 PM meeting, and the Friends of the Library have a fundraiser. If you click any of those links, you will be brought to another page with more information. Either it's their agenda or just detailed on those pieces. On 12/13 is the Paxton Holiday Event. So this is run by a number of parties, including Recreation. It's located at the St. Columba Church parking lot, Town Common, Richards Ave. You can vote for the best town truck holiday makeover, warm up by the fire pits, make s'mores, cornhole. I assume it's play cornhole and not make cornhole. Food, spread holiday cheer. Mike's Ultimate Grill will be available for food purchases. There's also tables that will be there from both Paxton's American Legion, Richards Memorial Library, the Scouts, Lions Club, Country. So we do have some things that are out there. We have a part-time public safety officer for AMC, although I think we just filled that, so we are all set. Exclude that piece. Permitting Economic Development Coordinator position is available again, as well as a library assistant substitute. You can get more information for both of these positions on our website. For volunteering opportunities for those who would like something to do and would like to start the new year contributing to the town and getting involved, we do have a number of opportunities and openings for folks. 3 of those openings are actually elected officials, so anyone who applies for one of these positions is ultimately appointed by both the select board and that current sitting board, would serve until the next annual town election in May. If they're interested in serving beyond that point, they would have to run for election as standard course through either the town caucus or pulling nomination papers earlier than May. And those positions include the water commissioner, the Wachusett Regional School Committee member, and the planning board. So anyone who's interested in those, you can click on this for more information. The website also has the volunteer application, the link's also in the report. And we're asking if you can get in by December 31st at 4 p.m. so we can hopefully schedule these on the first select board meeting in January if we have applicants for each of these positions. So far, we've received 1 for the Wachusett Regional School Committee, and I believe that is all for those. If you're interested in other positions that are not elected, please check out our website. We have a number of openings and available positions. Town business updates. So HR, we do... we're very sad, but unfortunately Tiffany Sidholm, who's been with the town for a number of years in the DPW admin manager position and had taken the permanent economic development coordinator position, is actually going to be leaving the town. So we're working through a number of septic matters.
And well matters, yeah.
And well matters
Yeah.
that I don't know, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Special act, so the special act, as just voted by the select board, that is in the hands of the general court or the electorate at this point. They currently have the document, and if you'd like to follow the course of that bill, you can click on the link I attached, and you will see the life of the bill. It was just given a bill number late last week, I don't remember, right before I sent out this report, because I was actually adding in going, oh, I didn't know it changed. All right, 10 West. So just wanted to give everyone a brief update on 10 West. I know there's lots of chatter out there, but I wanted to give some of the facts on the situation. So we've always leased 10 West out to a business. I think it's been now just about almost 14 years, less than 14 years since we started the lease. We did an initial request for proposals when we first did this with the very first owner. I think it was Land and Sea. Then there was another tenant after that, and then 10 West came along, and they were the most recent tenant. We still are currently in a contract with 10 West. They currently pay $400 per month in lieu of property taxes for the cost of their lease. We have not received to this date any written request for a sublease or for termination of the lease to date. So I know we've gotten a lot of questions, and there's been a lot of chatter about what the town's planning to do with that building. At this time, there's nothing we can do because we're still currently contracted out in the lease. So unless and until something changes, it won't rise to the level of being on the select board's docket for today. We could have experienced some
Significant
financial
problems. Yeah.
and
The temperature dropped to 16 degrees that night, if I remember.
strategic problems. So, but happy to report that's all good for the time being. So any questions on that? I know that's something I've been getting a lot of questions about lately.
I know there's been a lot of questions around the septic over there at 10 West. I think that there's been a lot of questions about why hasn't the town fixed the septic? Is the septic broken?
So I've talked to Wayne. Wayne's our health inspector. It's not so much that it's broken, it's that, you know, it's a very old system, and I don't think it could currently handle the amount that was coming out in it, as well as what was coming out. We've had some recent issues, you know, when we had the septic pumped most recently. I don't remember how many months ago it was. It was an emergency situation, and we ended up having grease that was caked on top of it. That was an issue. I believe Wayne worked with the tenants to have them pump more on a regular basis and just send those pumping records to the town for those pieces. But it's an older system.
It wasn't designed to handle that type of business, I don't think. Okay.
Do you think that after the lease is finished, we should take that property back? Because it's a liability with the septic being as it is.
I think what we're realizing is that the amount that the town was getting in exchange for use of the building doesn't adequately fund maintenance of the building.
Yeah.
And so, you know, essentially what we're doing is we're subsidizing a business, and, you know, it's not fair for us to do that for one business in town and not be able to offer the same subsidy to any other business in town. So, I know.
So updates, so COA, AD updates, so COA, ADA door. So everything has been installed. We're just waiting to connect with an electrician. It seems to be a little bit of a challenge. We've worked through a couple. We're just trying to find someone's availability to come in and connect the buttons. So once the buttons are connected, then the ADA project is complete. And as anyone visiting the COA, you should be able to push that lovely button on the outside, and the door shall smoothly open for you so that you can enter in without having to finagle the door to get yourself inside. Maya risk management grants, so the plumbers were out the week prior to Thanksgiving. Everything so far is looking good. It looks like that job was completed and we finished the grant, and hopefully we will stop spending money annually on plumbers to adjust issues for plumbing not being plumbed modern. IT grant, so we are working on this still. We have till the end of June. We're trying to do some pieces in piecemeal. The select board voted tonight for the sole source procurement, so that allows us to work with the vendor who had done the assessment to come out and actually start doing the permitting office. So they'll come in, they'll install all of the shelving, all of the folders, they put the labor behind it as well, and actually get it so that for every single address we have in town, we have one set of files that will have fire permits, building permits, planning, applications, zoning, Board of Health, conservation, and septic. Well, that's part of Board of Health, but, so that will be lovely. We also just we're able to use some of these funds to offset the cost of the new printer for Town Hall. We traditionally have leased it, so we've used a little bit of that and a little bit of this to purchase it. Still all under $10,000 for the printer. But the printer arrived today. It's a little smaller, not like tiny, it's more petite than the current Ricoh we have. We've also been starting to pick up some scanners, desktop scanners, so it's easier for people to scan all the materials and make it easier to switch over to OCR so you can read the files. And then we also picked up, we're waiting for it to be delivered, because now we need a liftgate, is a plotter scanner. So it's one of those large 36 inches piece. It can print plans if we want it to, but more so, the annoying part for at least this building is we get requests for septic plans almost on a weekly basis. And as of right now, the only way to do anything with that is you put it on the floor, you stand back with your phone, you hope you're at the right angle, and you hit click. So not only being able to actually scan the plans, but also getting to the point where first step would be for planning board to figure out what direction.
How about planning and zoning? I mean, it's,
I have no objection. I'm here. You just tell me where to go when, and I'm there. I think the whole idea, right, one of the pieces of feedback we got when we talked about it was some public members felt like it wasn't a public enough process. So, we had 5 public information sessions. We had a public hearing in front of the planning board. We had at least 2 meetings before the select board with updates and so forth. But they felt like it still wasn't a public enough session. So I think giving the control to the planning board and still throwing it back if you need to the zoning steering group, if we have to do legwork, and then bring it back to planning board for planning board to discuss. I'm out of ideas.
go.
Roberta has ideas.
Well,
I do think that the committee, I'm sorry, Roberta, I do think that
Group.
the group, I'm sorry, we need to be careful not to call it a committee, because committee makes it sound like it's subject to open meeting law, and we should have had minutes and all of that. That didn't take place, but I think going forward, it would make sense to do that, so that people that are really interested can look into the, the I don't want to say behind the scenes, but look into how a decision was arrived at, so that they can see, hey, they decided on this particular stretch of roadway. What was the thought process in going into that? And they can review the meetings and or the minutes in order to understand that. And hopefully going forward, we'll have that piece available.
So you're saying that we should have a committee?
I think that it should be I think it should be within the purview of the planning board, like it is in most other towns.
Understood.
The planning is saying it's too much just for
No,
planning.
and accepted. However, I'm not sure where we are tonight. I mean, are we gonna come back in the spring with warrant articles for each?
In with Neil's agenda, at those planning board meetings, and come up with consensus amongst the group, amongst the planning board, and then amongst whoever attends those meetings.
And I have no issue with, we can make an agenda item each month or whenever we meet to say an update or a discussion as to where we stand with the zoning bylaw project. I'm fine with that. But I'm not sure where we are tonight. We're basically left with what we had in place prior to the special town meeting.
Right.
And we'll have further discussions in public session about that. But, okay, Heather, I'm fine with that. Last item will be zoning update. And hopefully the public will take us up on that.
Go ahead, Kirk.
My thoughts on that, Neil, is that I think we do need to break it down into smaller bites. And the most contentious part of that whole thing was the business district.
Well, but you haven't heard what's coming. MBTA's got to come sometime next spring. If you thought zoning was bad, Kirk.
Understood. There's some residential zoning stuff, there's some stuff in the bylaws, having been on that board for 19 years, that if we can get that updated and more consistent with the current, just get them current, period.
Yeah.
I was part of the last rewrite of the zoning bylaws.
I take exception with that. I don't think you were, back in 2002.
I was on the board for 19
Yeah, but
years.
the planning board handled the whole rewrite in 2002.
Okay.
We used Central Mass Regional as the consultant, and we rewrote the whole thing. And it was handled strictly by the planning board at that time.
But my point was that I think we need to get done what we can do to support the zoning board. That's not contentious.
I understand, but we're going to have a patchwork set of rules or regs.
But we didn't, we didn't unfortunately get to that part. So I think we can do it. I just think we need to know which changes are acceptable to the public in advance of it becoming a warrant article, for the Springtown meeting.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Roberta. I think
Nor do
people's
I.
opinions got jaded by simply the business district, and then they took that and sort of applied it to the whole. So if we go back, and I think you have to propose a different business district in association with it. My thought process as I'm sitting here thinking about it is that if you propose no business district or no change to the business district, potentially they're going to still focus on the issues that they had originally. But if you propose maybe a much smaller version of what you had proposed before, then that might actually get you the traction that you need.
I look forward to you attending the meeting with that input.
So, just a thought.
Okay.
I do think that we've all got our work cut out for us moving forward on that. So, I do want to take a moment, though, while we're talking about this, just to thank Neil and Roberta and everybody else who worked on those zoning bylaws, because there was an awful lot of work that went into that. And just words of encouragement, it's not all for naught just because it didn't pass at town meeting. We will continue to work on it with the intention to get something passed. So we'll get there. Have faith.
I would like to reiterate that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's well work involved.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Heather, go ahead. Continue.
All right, so I'm going to kind of breeze over the rest here. So TAGs is going to be, I think, just about the third year we're using them. One of the reasons to do a sole source instead of competitively bid is we have a lot of open projects, including the big one, which is using earmark funds to get our networking updated, and still finally get a handle on everything and figure out, where we go from here, replacement schedules and so forth. And right in the middle of work, we don't want to switch companies if we don't have to, or potentially have to. So we can just give consistency and continue on what's already been started. And then the updated grant trackers below, there's not really any updates right now except for the state earmarks have been released. We just have to get the budgets into them. So we're putting the materials together to get those in. So that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Heather? No. Kirk, any questions for Heather?
No questions.
Great, thank you. All right. Just get back to my agenda. All right, public comment? Any public comment?
I do.
Go ahead.
So I just want to go back to the special town meeting night and express my honest confusion and disappointment with the path that owe us an explanation as to why you chose this path if you did not support the citizens petition.
So I made it very clear during the select board meeting when this was discussed that there was a established path already moving forward for the town charter, which would have been transparent and publicly attendable in order to research and appropriately come up with any changes that might be needed to the town charter. I felt that there was no need at that point to rush a particular component of that. I continue to hold the opinion that a rush on any one component of that and to try to direct the work of the committee in a way or take work away from an established committee which would be able to meet publicly, have discussion, have public input before coming to an opinion based on a petition signed by 130 people, if I'm correct?
No, we submitted 130 signatures.
Yep.
I went back to see Lori 3 days later. I had over 320, and she said, Neil,
Yep.
you need 100, you're in.
Yep.
Please don't make me spend
That's
the time
great.
and verify. So
Yep,
there
totally
were
get it.
over 300 signatures from the populace.
Yep, I totally get it. And I just want to make clear that I'm not against the premise of the 5-person select board. It's the process that I have trouble with, right? And I am only one member of the board, so I don't want anybody to think that this was a select board decision.
But it was not stated that it wasn't. You did not stand up at that podium and say, I am speaking as Julia.
Of the meeting and to listen to it. There's no room for misinterpretation. As Roberta has already said, you said that the petitioners in the process lacked integrity. We came to this particular select board meeting on 4 occasions and spoke of it on each of those 4 occasions at a public meeting. You also indicated that it has the effect of lacking transparency. How more transparent could we have been than to come to the meetings, public meetings, wait to be called on, wait for public comment sessions to tell you exactly what we're going to do? And you said the citizens petition lacked integrity.
So I don't.
How does the citizens petition, which exists for the very reason and for the very purpose that we pursued it, how can you possibly say that that lacks integrity? And then afterwards, when you spoke, as Roberta has already said, which I thought was insulting, and here's the most telling, I think, disturbing testimony. I felt that something was going to happen at the board level, and I was prepared to speak, and I went after you spoke to the podium with prepared remarks. I just think that this is a sad commentary for us to have done what we did, as open and transparent as we did, and to be embarrassed the way that we were. The only saving grace is you didn't name us by name, but you said, how is it that and I'm glad that 80% of the people after you spoke still voted in favor of it. So I'm disappointed as well. And please don't say we misinterpreted it, because I've played that thing back 3 times. I've taken the notes. There's no room for misinterpretation. None.
So I just wanted to, I'm actually looking back at what I had said, because I don't recall saying that. My recollection is the words I used were that the choice to move forward with a charter review committee, which would be an open and transparent process, had integrity to it. I don't recall saying that the petitioners lacked integrity, okay? So I just want to make that
Why, Julia,
clear.
why at all would you have mentioned us and our efforts in your opposition to this? Why not just support the idea of a charter review committee as a body of work that's good for the town? Leave us out of it. You could have just left us and our process out of it and just used the argument if the board felt it needed an argument after it had already recommended the warrant article and said, our opinion is such, and it was a little derogatory to give us kudos for using our civic duty at the beginning too, but that's something else entirely.
Somebody signed that petition, right? I don't know what information they had available to them at the time they signed the petition. I don't know what questions they asked. I don't know what information was given to them. It's very common that people sign a petition because they feel like they have to, because the person is standing in front of them, not because they actually believe in what that petition stands for. So that's the problem I have, okay? Beyond that, we had established the committee, a charter review committee. It was already established before you came forward.
No, it was not.
It was
The idea of it,
process.
the
It was in the
concept of the
process.
plan was established.
Right.
But even today, that committee is not established, is it?
It is.
It hasn't
We
been-
appointed it today.
It's not sworn in yet. I mean, this started, we've heard about the process for over 6 or 7 months. And it wasn't until August, I think it was 17th or August 24th, that you came before in this room and said, I just want to inform you that we're going to
So
start
I have a question for you.
petition."
If you knew that we already had the charter review committee coming forward,
There
we
was
certainly.
discussions
No,
of it.
I'm asking the question. So we already had this coming forward. Please explain to me what the rush is for the one component of the charter review that you felt so strongly about.
So the idea of the Charter Review Committee has been on a goal list for a number of years. It had not been taken any further than getting to the goal list. Coincidentally, and as I'd said in my August meeting here, I had wanted to do this in May, when I saw the town and the select board struggling with the budget. I wanted to do this in May. I was advised at that time, because there was so much going on with the multiple attempts to pass a budget, to wait. And I did. There was no furtherance of that idea before I showed up in August. And the reason why it needs to be taken out of order is because, respectfully, we're at December 9th. You've just approved the committee. They have a great deal of work to do to understand the current charter as it is, to understand their role, to set a
Yeah.
meeting schedule. We have the people who I think knew what they were doing when they signed the petition. The people are very concerned with our next few budgets. To further delay the opportunity to bring a diverse and more expert view for this select board on financial issues is just going to be delayed if we have to bring it through the entire committee. If we all work together, which I hope we are, and get this legislation and the bill passed, we can have an election sooner rather than later, and hopefully in '26 have a fully vested 5-person select board that's addressing the next budget.
So I think we learned a lot from this last town meeting. One of the things that I think we've learned is that having an open, public, and transparent process and getting to a place is important, because it does generate a lot of complaints when people can't understand the decisions and why those decisions are being made. So this is why I really was a proponent of making sure that the Charter Review Committee is able to vet all of the options, have public input, have people be able to watch those meetings to understand why we're getting to the point we're getting before a recommendation is made, so that when it does go to town meeting, there's actually support for it. When we bully something through town meeting, the way this was bullied through,
Stop.
Which was bullied through? Which was? What was bullied
that's
through?
when we run into trouble.
What was bullied through?
So I want to make sure that we have support for the entire process. And so I apologize if I've offended you, but I think it's very important that I speak my mind and make sure that people understand where I'm coming from. Now, during town meeting, when I made the comments that I made, the prepared statement, as you say, and you're right, I prepared that. When I made those comments, what I had said was, it gave the impression, and I specifically said, I don't want to say that this is actually happening, but it gives the impression of bias or of trying to direct the process from behind the scenes. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case, but what I am saying is that we established a Charter Review Committee that was intended to be comprised of individuals that did not sit on any board, the Select Board or the ZBA or the Planning Board or the Finance Committee or anybody else, right? We specifically asked for people like that so that they could come together and try and do what is best for the town without being pulled in any one direction because of having an allegiance to a board. So I think there's value in that. And again, I absolutely apologize to you if you were hurt or offended by any of the words that I said. But I thought it was important for me to say the things that concerned me, and that's what concerned me. We are in a position, all of us, as leaders of this town, where we have to have that kind of open dialogue, and that's what happened. So again, I apologize, and I did not mean
was not bullied through. And what you did imply, Julia, was that the three of us really put the petition together when we learned that the committee wouldn't allow current volunteers, which that was disingenuous, and the timeline was completely
I never
off.
said that.
Yes, you did. You've got to go back and listen to the transcript.
I have it written
You
right
did.
here.
Well, you said it. You said that it was...
I said it gave the impression of trying to direct the process.
when we had already started the process before you put those parameters in place. So that is wrong. And that was giving the townspeople false information. And you were leading them in a direction that was not true.
I don't know that that's the case.
I think it is. So go ahead, Neil.
Okay, I guess, I just want to, just tonight in discussions, you used the word, the process we bullied, the citizens petition we bullied through. If that was the case, I would have seen a whole different vote. Heather, if you can pull up the results of that one question, I think it was warrant Article 6, it was 4-1. So we can't say the people were misinformed or were bullied or whatever.
I think that
if it was
people-
52-48, I would say, yeah, maybe you got some, there's some basis for your thought process. We're trying to help lighten the load
I appreciate
on this board.
I
mean, you
appreciate
have
that.
3 members that you
And
take on
I do not
incredible
take-
amount of work.
I do not take any issue with having 2 extra people to help shoulder that burden at all. The only problem that I had with this was the process by which it got approved, okay? Because I didn't feel that it was as transparent as a process which would have gone through a committee. That is it.
All right, so the reason then for a citizen's petition, for whatever the means are, whatever the reason is, whatever the issue is to bring something to light that the residents of the town may be disgruntled with. And in this case, they kind of agreed that maybe there is too much work on this board. We had waited, you're saying a year since May. I think the discussions have gone on further because, Heather, it was in your goals since you got here to review the charter. And, I mean, I'm not going to point fingers and we're going to rehash this whole thing. She's been here for 2.5 years. And we're no further, the committee was formed tonight. Tonight. It hasn't even been sworn in. They haven't said, this could literally take them, they may not be back till a year from now to give you a report. And that's not right. The expeditious fashion that you feel we took needed to be taken to serve the residents of this town better. And I think that was obvious, as I said, with almost 400 petition signatures, of which we only need 133, whatever Lori came up with, which is fine. It speaks volumes for what the people in this town want to see. And I was concerned. And I'll stop now because I have other issues I want to talk to tonight. We're going to be here till midnight.
Doubt that the town could swallow all that at one time. And so I applaud Julia and Roberta and Mark and Neil for all their efforts. But to continually wait until everything's perfect to redo the charter, it's just going to take forever. It's going to take an indefinite amount of time. And I think we could use the help now. So I've been a vocal component of that from the beginning, and I remain that. And I want to thank everyone who's signed the petition and stood up to support that.
And again, I don't have an issue with anyone opposing it at all. In thick skin, I definitely have, and I was not insulted at all by the vote that was taken on the zoning bylaw rewrite or anything else that happened. It was the way that this board chose to express the opposition to this particular warrant article. That's what I have an issue with. It is personal, because I think this board owes it in a transparent way to notify its citizens and those that are working on behalf of the town if there is a problem and what that problem is in advance of a town meeting. And that's what I have a problem with.
So I do think that the vote came down in favor of this, partly because people agreed, and I don't have a problem with that one bit, okay? As long as people understand and have been informed about what things maybe they should be thinking about going into that kind of a decision, right? So I stood up with the intention that I have no problem with this passing, right? I certainly have no problem with there being a 5-person board. However, I wanted people to hear the things that I felt. And at the time, we took the vote with the select board to recommend approval for this. I was on board with approving it. But the more I thought about it, the more concern I had. I voted to approve this with the select board. I was on board with approving it.
I understand that.
And that changes. The vote that I have to report at town meeting is approval or disapproval. And regardless of where I stood at that point, the vote was still approval because that's the vote that was taken that night.
No, Julie, I understand, but I guess what I'm saying is the way people saw that is even though the Select Board voted 3-0 in favor of supporting the article, it was right there, Select Board approves.
Yep.
in the future, and I'm not, you have every right to do that, but I think if you go off this and go down on the floor
Yep.
and say, now I'm here, I'm not here as a member of the select board, I live at whatever street or road, and I want to just address some personal concerns that I have.
Sure.
I think it would have gone a lot further in terms of how or why. I think you muddied the waters with the other two members of the board. I mean, it was like, why all of a sudden do we have this 11th hour change?
Yeah, well, point well taken, Neil.
Okay, all right, because I think the vote showed that the people were in favor of
Well,
the petition. They
When
want
I
this
made
to
my
move forward.
statement, I was not against the 5-person select board, and I think that's what people heard, is that I honestly think people, and this is some of the feedback that I got after the meeting, was that people were actually confused as to whether I was in support of it or not. So, so that might be part of it, and I kicked myself a little bit after the meeting for not making that more clear. But-
Okay,
So can I have a quick word then? I don't want to
please.
belabor this anything. I was for the 5-member board. It's not even going to affect me being on the board because I come off the board next year, so it won't even affect me in that way.
Are you not going to run for
No.
re-election? Oh, come on, we'll
No.
twist your arm.
No, no way. But I apologise, Roberta, if you thought that was my view. But when Julie got up, I thought that was her view because we'd not had any. We have to have a meeting to discuss that to make that statement. So when Julia got up, I just thought that was her view and left it at that. I didn't perceive it like the rest of everybody perceives it, and that's probably my not knowing enough about being on the select board. But I should do. But I honestly didn't have anything prepared. I wasn't against it, and the vote was for it. So I didn't take any objection to it. Initially, I thought the same as Julia, that we should go through the process, the charter review. But as you've stated, it's going to take a while to do that. And when I saw the petition, how many people signed that petition, that was the turning point for me. And that's when I said, the town's spoken. So, and I did.
Et cetera, put forth in this town to do that.
Thank you. The next item I just want to bring up briefly, and I think Heather has started it, is I feel like the town is owed a full briefing on 10 West. It's shocking to me that some of the board members maybe don't know that there was a septic issue because, as Heather had stated, everyone in town has an idea of what happened there. It has been for a long time a very important place of business for the town, for its residents, for also potential revenue. There are a lot of conflicting views of what happened, and I think to not address and be transparent about what has happened there will really leave the town potentially in a bad light, of people feeling as though, and we heard this a lot in our group meetings about zoning, that people feel as though the town is not business-friendly, and that includes the Board of Selectmen, the administration, and I'm, again, not saying that is my opinion, but I'm saying that is what we heard based on the rumor, the rhetoric that was being discussed around 10 West leaving. And if there are issues with the building, as what Carol had described, I think the town needs to take a serious look at sale of that property, preferably to a business, so that the liabilities are then off the town's backs. And with that would come some cost to separate those utilities, but I think it would be a disservice to the town to just utilize that building for another town service or program that is not generating any revenue without an expert analysis on the existing conditions, the potential future of that. In our analysis of the business zone, what we determined that there's less than 0.01% of properties in town that are currently zoned business, and a lot of them are owned by the same person or people. So it really does limit opportunity. So those that were nervous about competition, you'll never sort of achieve market rent because there's no competition. You're never going to get your landlord to improve your property because there's no competition. There's no place for you to go as a convenience store, as a liquor store. I think that building, as difficult as it may be for some, is still a very nice asset for the town as a for-profit business. And I think the town should seriously look at that, as keeping that a business and selling it and getting it off of its back and having someone do that. But
Business-friendly, so.
I just don't want it to go straight from 10 West to another business before we've had a chance to have a look at everything.
Right, I don't think it can, though. If there are septic issues,
So I just want to be clear, the septic is old, but it is perfectly functional, right? So
for how many gallons of water a day?
it's not
what's
the
going
water,
in.
it was the grease that was the issue, right? So when that
The use.
when that building when we allowed a business to go into that building, it was supposed to be for prepared foods only, not for any cooking. And what ended up happening is that slowly morphed into more and more cooking. And unfortunately, septic can't handle the level of grease that comes from that type of cooking. And so, Darlene was wise to move to another building where she can do the kind of business that she wants to
Absolutely,
do.
yep.
And so that, and it looks like she's doing a great job. It looks beautiful, actually, from what I can see. So
No, and she was a tremendous business advocate for the town. I mean, she did so much for the town that a lot of people know, but a lot of people don't. I mean, she supported everything that she possibly could. So, and she's going to be missed. I mean, it's only been a month, and I think people are already aware that, the impact that she had. So, all right, are we good with that? You got more? You sure? I'll tee it up for you if you're ready. Okay.
Could I just weigh in on the
Please. I'm
10
sorry,
West
you're
thing?
behind me. You're behind me.
The irony of this is that there's no doubt 10 West is a fan favorite, but the irony is where that business has relocated, which was started by a Paxton business who wanted to construct a certain facility in Paxton, and for all kinds of reasons we can't relive this evening, wasn't allowed to do it.
right.
So did so in Holden, and now a fan favorite business has moved there. The circular,
That we need to be more business friendly. For so long, we have zoned business out of this town. And so, it makes perfect sense for us to have another look at that, as we have been doing. But, obviously, the town wants something a little different than what we presented, and that's okay. So we'll have to go back to the drawing board on it a little bit. That's okay.
I'm not completely convinced that the town wants something different. I mean, yes, the town definitely doesn't want to change, but a town that doesn't change is not a thriving town. I mean, we have to embrace some sense of change.
Yep.
Because if not, we're gonna have to continue to raise taxes. If we raise taxes, we're going to tax the older folks out of town, which are gonna bring in younger families, which are gonna tax the school system. And it's a perpetual cycle that eventually we're just gonna get gobbled up by Worcester or some other big town. And we have to be open to ideas of how to keep the character of our town, yet make our town more of a destination than a drive-through. And that's the struggle we have. And hopefully, the 15 people that listen to this online will think about that.
Just ask.
is that Alan Stoll that wanted to?
Yeah, does he have a question?
No, I'm good.
Ellen, can you just mute because we're getting some background noise from you? Thank you.
Next item?
Could I jump in before you, Neil, to one, because unfortunately, I need to leave, and I hate to leave. I want to go back to the special town meeting one last time, standards, and that could very well, and speaking about not buying a lot of clears, we may not have that particular attendance at the next time this comes up for that very reason.
Right.
I think there was more that could have and should have been done to shut that down. And if I was the town moderator, that person wouldn't have seen the end of the meeting. And I think that's the standard we need to take. That was inexcusable for Mr. Bagdis to be a victim of that, quite frankly. And those that want to watch it and hear it can see for themselves. I was not happy to be a part of that. And And the two of us, the three of us, the two of them and the three of us, know several people who left for that very reason.
I think there was a lot of people.
That's got to change.
There was a lot of people, too, that were dissuaded from speaking because they didn't feel comfortable standing up in front of that crowd.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Neil, I want to apologize as a town citizen that you had to experience that.
Oh, that's all right. We're all thick-skinned here in this room. I'm used to that.
Yeah, but it's still not fair.
No, listen, I agree. I was upset when I got home. I talked to my wife because she left early when she heard what had happened. She said, I'm not going to put up with this. She retired for the evening. I'm sitting there on the couch with the dog, and I started laughing. And she came out and said, what's so funny? I said, I'm just thinking about what happened. So being upset for the 15 or 20 minutes following the meeting, getting home, and then unwinding. Of course, I had a libation, which helped. But anyway, then I just started laughing, and she couldn't, I was laughing kind of loud. But anyway, all right, can we move on? We good?
Can I just say that I think the town moderator did as good a job as he could do. I mean, that person was, one of the people weren't going to be controlled either way, so.
Correct.
So I think it wasn't on the town moderator.
No, but it was again, it's his meeting. He runs it, but, I mean, it was,
He did the
I'm
best
going to
he
use
could
it,
under
we
the
were almost at a mob
circumstances.
scene. It was.
It was a very difficult
Isn't there a
situation.
reason why the police are there? And didn't that person say, what are you going to do, arrest me? Like, I
Yeah.
do think there should be more, the police presence that are there should be there to make everyone feel comfortable. And no one felt comfortable.
No.
It just felt
Yeah.
like it was a time bomb that was about to go off.
We'll do the best we can to mitigate those in the future.
Yep.
No, it'll be
It's just
fun.
not something, you said, Neil, it's not something we've ever seen before.
No,
and-
never. And it's funny, we'll go back years from now, we'll say, remember when?
Remember that
special
meeting?
town meeting? Okay, and
Yeah.
that's kind of, it'll go in the history, the archives
Yeah.
of the town, it's saying, remember.
Yep.
All right, I'd just like to move on.
Neil Bagger's been insulted.
Yeah, whatever, I'm good. Happens every day. A couple of things have come up that people have, I was aware of after someone mentioned it, whatever, and I talked with Heather about this. The sign that has been newly installed at Dr. Seaman's office
Yes.
is in violation of the current zoning laws.
Okay.
I don't know who approved it, I don't know how it got through, whatever, but it needs to be resolved. We're setting a precedent, and it's got nothing to do with the new zoning versus the current zoning. That is a pre-existing, non-conforming use. I went through the zoning after it was mentioned to me, and I looked it up, and Scott Seaman had the sign there. It was a ground-lit sign, approximately 3 by 4 on 2 posts, which is 12 square feet, which is what he's allowed as an accessory use for a business in that building. The sign that is there now, when I reviewed the application with Heather, was 5 by 8, 5 feet by 8 feet. I think, you and I looked, anyway, we looked at it.
We did, I have no,
All right,
I
so
no
anyway,
recall.
it's 5 by 8 is 40 square feet, which is way too big. It's internally lighted, which we didn't want. That what is proposed in the new zoning. It would have to have been ground lit, but it needs to be removed. Somehow we have to get the zoning enforcement officer. It cannot stay.
That's the person that needs to get involved is
All
the
right, so
zoning
I've sent
enforcement
him
officer.
2 emails, and I have had no response. I actually went over this with Heather, and she said sometimes he gets bogged down, but the longer that it stays, the harder it's going to be to remove. So I would appreciate some nudging from this committee, this board, Heather, or somebody to just, it cannot stay. It's been up now less than a month, but the longer it goes, it's going to be, well, we've been there for 30 days, it's going to stay. And that's unacceptable.
It's on my list. I have a meeting with Dave tomorrow.
Okay. But I don't know how the process, I don't know what happened. It's just one of those things, but it fell in a crack and it got railroaded or run through and it's done.
Was there any, was there a permit? Was there?
I don't know. I think
don't
there was
know.
an
Okay.
application because that's how we found the size of it. The 7 saws. One of your members, Mr. Hewells, and he and I have already spoken at some point, not at length, but I just mentioned, he was in conflict of that vote because he works at times, receives compensation, whether it be $1, a bottle of beer, whatever, a basket of food, for work that he has done, performed in Holden or whatever here, if they're ever here. So somebody made that statement to me, looked at it, and said, what should I do? And I said, let me look at it. You voted tonight to approve the liquor license or whatever for the rest of 25 for the next year, and he should have recused himself at that point. I don't think it's going to go to the state, but we all need to be aware of conflict of interest laws and how they affect all of us. And just pleading like I didn't know or I didn't understand, we all take the training every year, send the certificate into Lori, and she sends it into the state, so we've all done it. But we need to be very, very careful moving forward. So, all right. Sorry about that, Kirk.
No offense taken. I actually have spoken with folks about that. That is in Holden. Yes, they applied for a license in Paxton, but my compensation, which is basically I forfeit my compensation when I play music there to the rest of the band. But thank you for bringing it up.
All right, you're really splitting hairs here, and if we were in a court of law and going to interpret what's what, trust me, I believe you're in the wrong at this point. But again, it's not going any further, other than we've had this discussion now publicly, and you are aware of it moving forward. Anything to do with Seven Saws, whether they're in Holden, Paxton, Rutland, Worcester, Leicester, Spencer, Boston, whatever, you work for that, you have worked for that entity. Okay. All right.
If you want us to take a new vote tonight.
No, that's fine. I'm good with that, because the vote would pass 2-1, so it's okay. But we really need to be aware of what's going on here. And the last thing I would ask is that as we move forward, because we're going to come into another contentious vote come the spring for the MBTA zoning, it would be wise if we had data to support the earmarks that you have received from the state over, let's just pick a period, last 3 years, and moving forward, if we don't pass that, then we're not getting into that tonight,
yeah.
people, please don't get upset. But we just need to have all the information out there for the public to consider as this goes forward. So, okay? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And with that, there's going to be
Have your calendars, if there's any chance you could do about 10 a.m. on Thursday, was that what worked? That does not
I
work for
cannot do
Carol.
it. If it works for Carol and Kirk, by all means, please proceed.
Yeah, but as I said to Donna, it all relies on whether the kids are okay, because I'm babysitting that day and I'm getting somebody else to look after them.
Yep.
But so I'd need 2 backups.
Is there another time between Thursday and Friday, even during the day or evening, that you all could do, or 2 of 3 could do?
I could do very early in the morning on Thursday. I had emailed Donna, I think I just sent it this afternoon, so you may not have seen it yet, that I could do like a 9 o'clock at the latest, but I couldn't do anything after that, and then I'm straight through Thursday. Friday I am available. Let's see.
It could also be in the afternoon or early evening. I think it's going to be about 5-10 minutes, unless there's questions.
Yeah.
If it's only gonna be 5 or 10 minutes, just text me a time and I'll show up.
Virtually, Kirk.
Virtually, but I can step out of whatever I'm doing for 5 minutes.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Bio breaks are allowed.
We just have to let Kateri know, because she has to post it.
Right. Yep. Yeah, so I could do early in the morning on Thursday, but after that point, I am committed. And then Friday all day, I'm available.
So could we have done it tonight? You said everything.
No, we couldn't have. We would have had to post it 2 days prior. We didn't have everything ready to go.
Friday's the best day for me.
Are you available on Friday?
I'll try. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But if there's 2 of you there, that's fine.
Julia, Kirk, what time on Friday? And then we're going to make sure Kateri's available, because she's the star of the show.
Just text me when she's available on Friday and I'll adjust my schedule accordingly.
Okay, I'm just double checking, but I think Friday I'm available all day. Yeah,
So we'll let Kateri know tomorrow and see what we can put on the books.
whatever works. Yep.
Okay, awesome. I interrupted your motion to adjourn, I'm sorry.
Please let me make that
Try
motion.
again.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, Kirk?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. We are adjourned.